Hi, this is Marc Morrell from Let's Voltron, the official Voltron podcast. I'm here with Greg Tyler, my co-host.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest with us this time from RetroCon in Greater Philadelphia Expo Center. This is in Oaks, Pennsylvania. The one, the only, Allura and Haggar from Voltron, Defender of the Universe, and Voltron the Third Dimension, BJ Ward.
Oh, that's me. BJ Ward, hi. How are you?
It has been a long time that we've been having people who have listened to our podcast for almost 5 years now that have been asking for you as an interview.
Really?
Yes.
That's nice. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, it's an honor for me personally, and it's just great to finally speak with you. We've spoken with cast members and crew members from the newest Voltron series back to the original, but of all the people, you are the person that I personally have wanted to speak with the most.
And you don't say this to all the guests.
Oh, no, I do not.
Okay, all right. Well, it was a great job. I mean, we didn't know when we did Voltron if it would be anything because it was a Japanese cartoon, and the mouths were just going whoa, 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 like this, and we just did everything to time. You know, they'd say, whatever the thing was, go Blue Lion, and they'd say, okay, can knock off 0.2 of a second on that. Okay, we need it to be exactly 1.2, whatever, and then so we didn't even know. We thought, well, this will never see the light of day, and so 120 later, and then we did another series, and now here we are in Oaks, Pennsylvania, and all these people come up and go, oh, I grew up with that, and it's just very sweet.
Yeah,
I
and
had no idea.
the Voltron, when it came out and it got popular, it was like lightning in a bottle. And now we've got Voltron Legendary Defender on Netflix. Have you actually seen that show?
I haven't. I just haven't seen much, but I mean, I'd be happy to see it.
Life happens, right?
Yeah, life is busy, and there's so much product to see. And I just tape things, and then I also go, well, it's on Netflix. I can always see it, but then I just don't get a chance. So
Well, it's a wonderful show, too, and it will have 78 episodes by the time December 14th comes out. And it has a beginning, a middle, and an end,
Great.
which some of the other series did not get.
yeah, well, they know something we didn't know. You know.
I have to ask you, when you auditioned for Voltron, did you know that you would be performing every female voice on the show at that time?
We didn't know. We didn't know anything about it. It was, I guess I auditioned. I'm sure I auditioned. And then everybody auditions and they show the character Allura. And I think they showed the Haggar character. And I just thought, well, I'll throw that in too. But there were only, the other guys, it was all men and me. And in those days, they could get us for 3 voices per show for price of one. So if we all got filled up, like if we all had 3 voices that day and there was another voice that had to be done, we'd have to figure out among us who's going to do that, you know. Like Michael, sometimes there were too many women in an episode that I was doing, and there's only a certain amount of women you can do, raise, low, but if they're all the same age, it's really difficult to find variety. For me to do like 3 women that are all the same age, it'll sound pretty much the same. So Michael did one of them, women. And then there was a crazy 80-year-old guy from outer space, an alien, and I did him. So, you know, at that point, we were just throwing it in, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughs.
In addition to Allura and Haggar, you also did Ramel. Do you remember what you had to do to get Ramel just a slight...
Another princess who looked similar to Allura, sort of helping with the cause to fight Zarkon and all that stuff.
I don't remember that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, do you know what she sounded like?
She was Allura, but a slightly deeper Allura.
More of a deep, more pensive, more, I would almost say, war-weary kind of a person.
I remember we all had to just do what came up. And so in those days, I think my voice was like up here. It's like, hi, welcome to Denny's. That was kind of my voice. And so if she was somebody else, I'd probably put her down here like this. But it's basically my voice. I'm not a mimic or anything. I don't do impressions or anything.
Another voice that you're well known for from that show is Nanny, who was Princess Allura's caretaker. And she had sort of an Eastern European kind of accent and was a very maternal character. And and then Voltron had over its 120 episodes, 120 or so episodes. There were the Lion pilots like Princess Allura, and then the vehicle team, the various vehicles that would form together, and you had performed three of the three female pilots from that batch of episodes too. And
I don't, it was probably just one day and we all just said, we need four more voices. Okay, I'll do that, you do that. And, pardon me. And since I never really heard the show or saw the show, that's just amazing that you know that.
Well, we are Voltron hardcore, We're not going to ask you any trivia questions at all.
Yeah. He would beat me you know so much more about it than I do.
But what you can speak to is what it was like working with Michael and Neil and Peter and Lenny and Jack.
I worked with them all the time on all kinds of things. And so we were just like, it was old homemade when we got in there. Lenny, of course, was a genius, amazing. And he was one of the first people I ever saw do voiceover. And I was like, how can you do that and play a scene with yourself in two different parts? And he was just a master. And Michael was on my first series ever, which was John of the Jungle at Hanna-Barbera. And he was very helpful to me because I didn't know what I was doing. I was picked because I had this nice little high voice and, ghost. And then Michael would say, oh, you have to be, okay, what does a cheetah sound like, Shanna? And I'd be like, right. And Michael would whisper in my ear, try this, try that, And it was really on-the-job training, as I like to say.
And so, flash ahead from after Voltron Defender of the Universe to the late 90s, 1998, Voltron the Third Dimension. Many shows that get rebooted don't recast the original voice actors in newer incarnations. But in that case, you and Neil Ross and Michael Bell reprised your roles. Do you remember if you were asked back explicitly, or did you have to audition? Do you remember?
I do not remember. I think we also had another woman, I think Tress, was she in it? Tress McNeil, who was very, very talented, great girl. She did some voices, which was easier on me, of course. Then they sounded really different. She's very versatile.
Of course, she was Dot on Animaniacs, too.
Oh, she's done a million things. And on The Simpsons, she's amazing. And we were in the Groundlings together, so I knew Tress before she did voiceover even, yeah. We were in the same voiceover workshops many, many years ago when we were both kind of starting out. And she just has a real feel for it. She's really very, very smart and very talented.
So what is it like? Voltron came out in 1984, which meant you must have made the episodes prior to that point and recorded much of the content. What is it like 30-odd years later to be at a convention where not just Voltron, of course, but Scooby-Doo, G.I. Joe, Super Friends, various things that you've done decades ago, there are all these people who can answer the crazy trivia questions and come up to you and tell you how much they enjoyed something that may have only taken days or weeks or months all those years ago. What's that like?
It's really been interesting. I hear stories from people who, these were voices they heard in their heads as children. And, they say that we came home at 3 o'clock and had our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and we listened to you. And we'd never thought that, we just didn't think that way. And now with the internet and everything is preserved. And it wasn't a big deal then. There weren't Comic-Cons or people that came. I don't think there were even cell phones. Abraham Lincoln was in my show, so I remember. No, it was so long ago. I don't remember, but it's just been fascinating to meet these people that have great stories to tell about what it meant to them. And it just makes you feel really good that, you thought you were just doing a little cartoon, but also a lot of, and so you didn't think it was very important at the time. But yet, when you go to hospitals, little kids, all they do is watch cartoons on television. And you go, gee, maybe it's not such a bad thing to entertain somebody or to make somebody laugh. Or you never know where you're going to make any kind of a difference,
Or if those characters were made into like action figures or other types of merchandise that has that character's image all over it, and it's actually you were the voice of that character.
I know it's just mind-boggling to me, really is.
Over your career, you've done far, far more than voiceover work. What would you say are some of the things that you were the proudest of that people who come to a convention like this might have no awareness of?
I think my opera career because I was doing voiceovers and I always sang, and I always made a living with my voice some way or other. And I remember when I started studying opera, it was just for fun because I thought there's nothing, I'm not an opera buff, I don't know anything. And I started finding out something about it, and then my teacher said, "Well, you're getting pretty good. Why don't you invite some people over, friends of yours?" And I was like, "I can't sing. It's such a big thing. Such a big, it's like Shakespeare. It's so much bigger than just talking and everything." And so I did invite people over, and my husband said, "Well, why don't we just have people over on a Sunday and I'll make some omelets for people and you can sing and we'll call it Opera and Omelets." And so we started doing this show that I came up with, and I started writing funny things that I was learning about opera and had my little tape recorder on, and I'd hear back and I'd go, "Oh, that's interesting. That's pretty funny, or that's no good." And I actually got the show out and got an agent in New York with the show, and I traveled for 10 years all across the country. I played the Kennedy Center, the Alice Tully Hall, Australia, big opera houses. And so here I was coming in sort of the back door out of like cartoon voices. So nobody in the opera world knew anything about me. And they were like, "Well, she hasn't come up through the ranks. They have to go to Germany and live there and sing all the roles." And it was my show, so I could do anything I wanted to do. And I did my voices in it sometimes, just to throw it in. And so I was so proud that something just came out of me that I had no idea. I worked very hard to keep the voice up. Of course, you had to live like a nun. Scarves, no, this can't have a drink, you can't do that, you can't.
No Haggar the witch voices.
No witch voices. And I actually started turning things down, of course, cartoons, because I would realize that if you do, do that with your voice, the next day you're not going to be able to sing those high notes. So it was it was a definite decision. To stay with the opera because I was getting paid for that, and I had to be in good shape. You never know, you're going to get a cold, you're going to be sick. And so I just concentrated on that. So that's why some of the roles that I did for 15 years or something and I wasn't in town, they just hire somebody else, which is fine with me. I had my turn, and I think it's always good. Younger people come in and then they do it and they get their shot, and it's a cycle. There's enough for everybody.
Are there any particular voice actors that you know of today that are doing shows today that you particularly enjoy?
I never really watched a lot of cartoons. I know very talented people. Kath Soucie is a wonderful. Greg Griffin, she's an amazing talent. Tress McNeil. And I think if you're a woman especially, they have so many voices. They have to be so versatile because there's very little work for women. It's mostly males. And then usually the women that work a lot are the ones that have cute little boy voices. The voices are kind of texture like that, and that's just the regular voice. Right. So I just think there's a huge talent pool out there now that's really having a great time.
Oh, yeah.
So, to those fans who would like to follow more of what you do outside of your voiceover work, are there CDs or other kinds of products that you might recommend that they look into and to enjoy your work beyond the Voltron characters and the other characters that you've done?
Well, thank you for the plug. I think, you can find my albums. I've done about 6 or 7 albums. Like rock albums, cabaret albums. I've done 3 opera albums. I think you can get them on Amazon or CD Baby used to be. I used to be on CD Baby. I don't know even that's out there anymore. And I also wrote a children's book, as you know, for Simon and Schuster.
Let me go get it very quickly. Sorry, Cam.
We'll show it. Here we go.
Purchased this on Amazon about a week and a half ago, and my daughter's going to love this. So,
It's Farty Marty. You know, what's not funny about that? My target group is 7 to 9 year olds, I think. We really like it when bodily noises are very, very funny at that age. But this is is based on a famous character called Le Petit Man from France. And he was called, you know, he was a farteur, as I say in France, farteur. And he played the Moulin Rouge. He played big venues in the late 1800s. And he had people come to his, you know, like queens and kings. People came to see him. But he had something inside him that was, he was able to, nobody really knows how his body was built, but he could hold a lot of air in his body. And he would do things like, he would toot songs though, but he could toot pitches, and he would sing that way. Yeah, and this was, he came out in a tuxedo, you know, and of course the back was out of the pants part of the tuxedo, like a, what do you call those, Johnny Jumpers things. And people would come to see him and pay quite a lot of money. I mean, it sounds like the most bizarre thing, but if you can look him up online or anywhere, Le Petit Man, and he was actually just a guy from France who they discovered he had this talent, but he could do like the 1912 overture. Yeah. You know, blow out candles from 2 feet across the stage. I mean, must have been the most insane, crazy thing. So I thought, well, why not, you know, animals do that just naturally. Why not have a cat that has this talent, and whenever he eats a certain kind of food, that's the kind of music that comes
amazing.
out of it.
My daughter hasn't seen this book yet. This is going to be a surprise when I get back home, and she's going to love it. And I love that there's a real life story behind it.
Based on a real character, Le Petit Man, Potomane, I think. Joseph Pujol, I think his name was, in France. And so he closed up the bakery, and now he had a stage career. I think Sigmund Freud saw one of his. He had really like people in the audience of great note. And it sounds like, oh, come on, you're making this up.
Like before we close out, we would like if you could do a little bit of Allura for us. I'm never going to ask you to do Haggar because that's going to tear your voice apart. But
Jack Angel calls those throat rippers.
They sometimes would make you do that to your Drew Blood, you know, but they got smarter later and said, let's do all the really destructive stuff at the end of the session, maybe on a Friday. Okay. Yeah. So I can't even think of what Allura would say, but just, go, Blue Lion. She was like right up here, you know. Mm-hmm. Keith, look out. Pidge. You know, I got him. You know, always like shooting and stuff like that.
yes.
Yeah. Was that it?
Yes. And would you be able to say, let's Voltron?
Let's Voltron.
Wow, that was amazing.
That's the name of our podcast.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
It's Voltron. Oh, it's a whole Voltron podcast.
Yes.
Oh, for goodness sakes. Oh,
All Voltron all the time, from the original series all the way to the current and beyond.
I can't believe you did that. What an amazing idea. Yeah. Well, I've met so many fans. I mean, I think there are just a lot of fans out there. I had no idea there was this big Voltron cult. So you're tapping in.
Oh, yeah. And when Voltron Legendary Defender came out, the numbers,
On Netflix now.
yeah, the numbers just skyrocketed. I mean, there's all new kinds of Voltron fans now, and we are helping them to go back to the originals and check them out and see, you know, how they compare to the current versions and all that kind of stuff. And people are actually going back and looking at your work.
Well, too bad we're not getting residuals.
And one of the things that I have personally always loved about Princess Allura, some people said, oh, she's a little too weak compared to the male characters. I always found, because of her past, her father had been killed by Zarkon, and she would be visited by his spirit every now and then for inspiration and motivation. But I always thought that because of her tortured past, she was the strongest character, because she led a planet that was in ruins, helping to rebuild it, and she was part of this team that was protecting the universe. And I've always found Allura to be the strongest character in the show, and your vocal performance drove at least 99% of that. So thank you so much for what you contributed to that show.
Wow, Thank you so much. I think she was one of the first women, like Scarlett in G.I. Joe, where she would really could kick it up with the boys. And I thought, well, I'm not going to make her a girl man and make her tough. You know, a lot of times you can be very strong and have a very small voice, and just you have your powers that coming in from that. You know, it's not the yelling kind, but it's the steady kind of I know what I'm doing. You know, that kind of thing. So.
You told us about a little bit of a voice session that you had with Michael and Neil recently. You don't have to give away what it's about, but can you tell us what it was like getting back together with Neil and Michael and doing the Voltron voices for something that's going to be coming up by the end of this year, right?
Yeah, and Jack Angel too was there. Yeah, I see Michael a lot because I still, you know, I see him. I know his wife. We were in the Groundlings together, and so I know them for a long time. And Neil had most of the words because he actually ended up being the announcer in it too. But it was the Voltron gang, and it's going to be a Voltron-y kind of Honda commercial for television. So yeah, so Voltron team or whatever we used to say, I forget. And we did everything together, like awesome, you know, as a team. And it was really interesting because they said, well, can you do this all together? And we didn't rehearse. And I said, Michael, count us off. And he'd go, 1, 2, 3, go, Voltron team. And we all did it exactly together. We just knew how each other talked, and we just remembered how they spoke and what the other person would probably do and how we would, and we ended up doing everything exactly together. And it was surprising to us that we didn't, it's just something in the back of your head from all the time that you did it, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
We are very much looking forward to that.
Oh, me too. It'll be fun.
And we really want to thank you for joining us on Let's Voltron, the official Voltron podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to know about it.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.